So yesterday there was a wheel, but a very weak way. Today's been a big day. Yesterday was a really big day. Um, Yesterday was election day. It was voting day. And being a veteran and alive and being able to vote in 2020, I wasn't, I really wasn't too excited to vote this time. I wasn't, I've kind of stepped away a little bit. I was aware and kind of keeping up with what was going on, but I just tried really hard to not be emotionally invested. And as I kept reading things throughout yesterday, before I went and voted and before the polls had closed, there was article after article about this election's going to be close. It's going to come down to a coin flip, and maybe even closer than a coin flip is what some articles that I was reading. Um, there was all these posters out there saying 3% double, they're always wrong. Polls are always wrong, right? But but there was a lot of setting up that hey, these votes may not be counted tonight. You may not know who the next president of the United States will be tonight. And as a veteran, like I said, as a veteran of 2020, not serving in the military, but like existing and voting and thriving as a being of mass, I I I'd heard that same stuff in 2020 that you're not going to hear the votes counted. You're not going to. You're just not going to find out who's president that night. Like it's not going to be like all the other elections. And so when I started hearing the same noise, I was like, okay, all right, I've seen this play before. And I was going to set up a little bit into and talk about election fraud, because I mean, as somebody that voted Trump in 2020, I swore that the world had cheated me. I swore that democracy did not exist. I swore that the republic had been broken and pillaged and raped by just these red-eyed, monstrous liberals. Just really nasty, wicked visions of some reality that I believed I existed and lived in. And this morning, I woke up and I felt very ashamed because last night I went to bed right when Trump got North Carolina. And I told my wife on the way to go voting last night, I said, I'll be very surprised if Trump wins this election. I was still under that scar of the 2020 election had fractured my mind and caused me so much detriment that I believed a theory of mass election fraud. And so walking into this vote, I had convinced myself, first of all, I'm not even going to vote. And then second of all, if I do vote, it doesn't matter because it's already decided. Kamala Harris is going to win. There's no way the establishment is going to allow Trump another term. He's been shot at. He's been, they've tried to throw him in prison. Like everything's against Trump. There's no way they're going to let some man that's not died and just drenched in that political blood ever get the highest office in all the land. There's no way. And so this morning I woke up very ashamed. Um, I was glad that Trump had won, but I was very ashamed that I believed that lie of 2020 of election fraud. And how I know it was a lie is as I was watching the election last night and they were breaking it down county by county by county. They were like, well, here's what Trump did in 2020. Here's what Biden did in 2020. Here's what Trump is doing now at this age or at this time. And here's what Kamala's doing versus what Biden did. And the numbers didn't lie. The numbers didn't lie. There was less turnout for Kamala and more turnout from Trump. Less turnout for Kamala versus Biden and more turnout for Trump than it was in 2020. And it was that way for every, well, I'm not going to like be the authority on this, but my perception was and what I could see is majority of these counties voted pro-Trump. And more people showed out for Trump and less people showed out for Kamala than they did for Biden. And I was watching the news this morning and they're interviewing some people at a diner in Pennsylvania. And one of the patrons there at the restaurant is that's being interviewed. She says, "Well, we so many people voted this time, so they couldn't rig it from us like they did last time." And I'm thinking that is such a stupid statement. Obviously, that woman doesn't have the vision, or well, obviously it hadn't been revealed to this woman yet that hey, you made your point. You made your point. More people showed up this time than they did last time. That's like if you boil the election down to to the bones, you boil it all the way down to the bones, and you can only see the bones. That's what an election is. Whoever gets the most votes wins. Now, our election is not based on popular vote, but electoral college, and how genius was our forefathers that we have an electoral college. But basically, that's it. Whoever has the most votes wins. Um, and that's obviously what Trump did. So I woke up this morning very ashamed, very ashamed that I spent 4 years of my life walking around believing that. And do I believe elections are pure and white as the driven snow, or however that weird saying is? Do I believe they're absolutely 100% just and there's no failure in it? There's no fraud in it? Absolutely not. History teaches us that's not even the case. Um, so like just take our own Democratic candidate that went up against Trump last night, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris in 2010 ran for Attorney General of California. She was running against a Republican. That night, on election night in 2010 in California, the San Francisco Chronicle, I believe, or a paper out of San Francisco one, it might be the Chronicle, they declared Kamala Harris as the winner. Even her own opponent, Cooley, a Republican, declared victory too. So it was all over for Kamala. Well, California is a state, it was at that time. I don't know if that's true today, but California was a state that allowed 30 days post election, post ballots being cast, where you can, before a candidate is determined if he's won or lost. So they allowed 30 days to count. That's their time period. You got 30 days before we crown the winner of the votes. And so on election night, Kamala's done for. But 3 weeks later, Kamala is crowned victor and the new Attorney General of California. Now, if you go back and look at those numbers in 2010, you'll see that Kamala, she won. She beat Cooley, the Republican, by less than a full percent. She beat him like 0.8%, a very small margin of votes. Now, was there something going on with the Republican Party that some guys won and some guys lost? No. All the other Democrats that ran alongside Kamala in other positions all throughout, the California House of Representatives, all that stuff. Everybody else in California, they won by like +5, +10 margins. And then here's Kamala winning her race by 0.8%. So when I'm reading yesterday and I'm listening and I'm hearing this is going closer than a coin flip, this is It's going to be close. And even seeing a tweet from Obama last night that said, guys, honor and praise your election, um, your ballot workers, because this race may not be decided till a couple days. And all that's from that playbook I heard in 2020. And my mind immediately went to that 2010 attorney general race in California with Kamala. I was like, crap, here it is again. The election is stolen. So much so, well, I'm not going to bring that up. I don't think that includes voter fraud. Well, there was a lot of talks about. I'm speaking to myself. I'm speaking out loud. Okay, I'll go ahead and say it. Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan the other day, and Elon Musk was talking about how vital this election was, and that if you do not vote today, there may never be a chance to vote against this opposing party ever again, just because of the illegal immigration and all of them shipped to battleground states, and those people would feel they would have a leg up. They would be more shamed and guilted into voting Democrat, even though they socially don't line up Democrat. Um, they would vote Democrat because of just because you feel entitled to it, like somebody gives you another country to live in. You don't pay taxes. You're getting welfare help. You would feel kind of obligated to vote for that person, even though you didn't agree that they were cool with drag queens reading to kids or a lot of their other social situations. Um, Kind of a segue. So yeah, I woke up very ashamed this morning. Very ashamed that I was believing that. Now, another example, another historical example of how our elections are not completely just, there is some cheating in it, is historically, well, look at what the Democrats did to Kansas. Before Kansas was even set up as a state. Like this is pre-Civil War. This is kind of like the linchpin. Well, I wouldn't say it wasn't like Fort Sumter being fired upon, but the events that took place in Kansas definitely set up the Civil War because before Kansas was even a bona fide state of the Union, um, there was a lot of arguments on if Kansas would be a slave state. Missouri was a slave state. And so, believe it or not, just less than 200 years ago, the Democrat Party was all about slavery. Like, that was kind of their thing. Like, we like slaves, we want slaves. How black people haven't read this and seen this, I don't understand. It's way above my head. I don't get it. But less than 200 years ago, the Democrats were all about slavery. Not that slavery existed, but if you remember, there was a governor of Alabama, Governor Wallace, that stood in the doorway and did like refuse to let two black girls go to college down there at Alabama, the University of Alabama. And that was in the 60s. That was crap. Man, I've turned around and it'll be here today, but that was less than 100 years ago. Why they can't see that the Democrat Party was about that, I don't get it. But uh, anyways, so Kansas was not a state. Missouri was a slave state. In Missouri, the Democrats wanted Kansas to be a slave state as well. But the people, what do they call them? The Jayhawkers, the people that lived in Kansas and the people in the Union did not really like the idea that new states being added to the country would be slave states. They kind of wanted, the Union wanted, when I say Union, I mean Republicans. Republicans wanted those other states to stay we're okay if you have slaves. And that was even Abraham Lincoln mentioned that several times throughout the Civil War. You can keep your slaves. You can keep your slaves. You just need to be a part of the Union. But that was kind of the Union's look of slavery. We don't care for it. It don't really bother us. But how about this? How about as we progress and we grow as a nation, because the Louisiana Purchase is taking place. This is right after the Mexican War, and we've gotten Texas and California and stuff like that. Like the union is like, as we grow and develop, and we're actually developing an economy as well, and we're players in the world market. How about we don't have like slavery? Like we just kind of let that be a southern thing. Like if you go south, you're gonna see that kind of stuff. But up here in these new states, you're America. We're union, baby. But but the Democrats were just very insistent on Kansas being a slave state. Now here's what they did. When it came to times for election, when it came to basically a vote on if it was going to be a slave state or not, and even just with the governing bodies and governing powers in those local elections, Democratic Missourians, I guess that's what they're called, people from Missouri went across the state to Kansas and voted in their elections. So much so, like pro-Democrat, pro-democratic policies, pro-slavery. They Missourians that had slaves that were pro-slavery went to Kansas and voted for those people that would ensure and wanted those slavery policies involved. And when they looked at the census, when they started counting the vote, they're like, "Whoa, this is more people that even live here." And look at where the voting trend is. These are all like Democratic people. It was a very wild and unjust, corrupt system in Kansas back in that startup there. Why I say all that to say this, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that was done back then is continuing going to happen today. Was there election fraud back in 2020? I don't know. Nobody can I mean, it's not definitive. And when you do seek it out, when you do try to find it, you get banned, you lose your job, it's kind of scary. But this morning very much gave me hope. Very much gave me hope. And what I realized as a country, or it may, you may see all the, ideology people, the people that are like pro conservative and pro liberal. Like we see that when we look at political landscapes. But honestly, what it came down to last night, the vote was you voted for your wallet. Nobody Nobody cared about social issues. Everybody cared about really their wallet. How can you ch- make how can you make my life better is basically what the vote was. And I think that's something we should all kind of take part in with our politicians. Let's quit getting bought in to these ideas of social issues. Let's quit tying our rope to parties, Republican or Democrat. Let's just tie our vote to whoever we think is going to do the best for us. Who's going to serve us more? Kamala Harris? Trump? And all the other stuff is just noise, right? Like, I mean, hmm, obviously, a mass majority of people voted on the fact of that they want a better economy. They don't want to pay a ton in taxes. They don't like a lot of their check coming out to fund strange and weird things to people that aren't even citizens. So I had a lot of hope in America this morning. I felt ashamed that I got caught up in this echo chamber of my political bubble. And I'm very hopeful, very much hopeful. Not in the man Trump, but just the fact that Americans actually voted on what affected them and not social issues that they just had to believe in and stick with, because the Democratic Party has become like almost like a Republican Party slash like there's it's very strange because I believe if Kamala Harris would have got elected, there really wouldn't have been a lot of changes. It would have kind of stayed the same. It was like when Obama got elected. Everybody had these grand ideas for what would happen if Obama got elected, and things kind of just stayed the same. We stuck with those same wars. The economy just kind of stuck the same way. It really didn't change much from Bush to Obama when it came to foreign policy. Um, it's the same way with Biden. As soon as Biden got in office, we pulled out of Afghanistan, but we did it in a way that we jumped immediately to the Ukraine. It's crazy, but it's the truth. And I heard a story today of a of a guy's wife crying, like coming to tears, about to cry, of just like the fear of if Kamala got elected as president. And I think it's kind of crazy. I mean, it's we look back on it, and we can laugh on it now, but it's kind of crazy because does everything really hinge on that one person? Because I mean, our founding fathers set this system up for three branches of government, and everything doesn't hinge on the executive branch. Um, if I could give any encouragement to anybody, it's it's kind of this. But before I get into it, kind of segue to this. So I'm trying to. I've challenged myself and tasked myself to read one book a day. Or not one book a day. That's insane. One book a week. So that's 52 weeks. I don't think this is a leap year. So I've got like 52 weeks, 52 books to read. And I've started since the end of August, and I'm staying consistent. Here it is, first week in November, first, second week in November, and I'm still consistently with it. But I'm reading right now Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, the first one. And there's a character in there that wasn't in the movies, or at least not the. Yeah, I know they have extended editions, but there's a character in there that was never in the movies, and it was Bombadil. Bombadil, I believe his name was. And before the council at Rivendell, um, long story short, he saves Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin. This is before they ran into Aragorn and Gandalf. This was when they were just trying to get to the Prancing Pony. And Bombadil saves them. Bombadil kind of finds out that Frodo is carrying that ring. And if you remember anything about those movies, people would lose their minds on the ring, obviously. Like they were tempted by it. And a lot of them had to show kind of some restraint and go, okay, yes, that ring would give me a lot of power, but I know deep down that only Saruman or Sauron is the only one that can wield that great power. So it's in vain, but I'm still lusting over that power and I'm still tempted to use it. So keep it away, but I'm going to try to remove myself at the same time. And then once you put the ring on, you become invisible. And Bombadil takes the ring, puts it on his finger. He takes it from Frodo. He like gladly wants to see the ring. And he takes the ring from Frodo. He puts the ring on his own finger and doesn't turn invisible. He laughs at it, looks at it, and then just kind of throws it back to Frodo. And it's the oddest thing because there's such buildup, there's such tension, um, there's just a lot amounted to this ring. And Bombadil, it doesn't affect him. And they talk about this later on in Rivendell. Like, hey, what? Because they're debating at the Council of Elrond or whatever. They're debating what to do with the ring. Get rid of it, keep it there. And even one suggestion is, what about Bombadil? It doesn't affect him. And Gandalf is like, well, no, it doesn't need to go to Bombadil, because he has no master. He isn't. The ring doesn't control him because power and all those temptations, all those lusts do not control him. Meaning he has no master. Nobody can master Bombadil because Bombadil is he's not tempted by that stuff. That stuff doesn't affect him. Pa- Great gain and great power he doesn't lust after. And so my encouraging word to you is, don't let this stuff master you. Don't let this stuff master you at all. I honestly did not want to vote yesterday just because I didn't want to be emotionally invested. Like I remember, I'm a Alabama football fan, and I remember Alabama, Nick Saban's last game. They're playing Michigan, and I remember going to the bathroom towards the end of the game, and like I'm a grown man, I stand when I pee, and instead of standing when I peed, I just sat down to relieve myself. And I'm sitting there, and my like arms are shaking. And after I'm done, I flush the toilet and I look in the mirror and I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, I don't have a kid that's on that football team. I haven't betted a lot of money on that. Why does this affect me so much that I'm like sitting here, sitting down on the toilet, peeing like a woman, and I'm shaking? What's wrong with me? Why does this? Why am I affected so much by something I have so little involved with? So that I have so what does it matter? And so you may say, Zane, that's not very American. That's not very patriotic. You should care. And obviously, I'm not saying don't vote and don't care about your country. But what I'm saying is, don't let this stuff become your master. This all has a way of sorting itself out. And our founding fathers were very wise and very smart to put so many safeguards in check so that one person can't rule them all. I mentioned earlier about there's nothing new under the sun. That's a Bible verse in the book of Ecclesiastes, written by Solomon, who is considered the wisest of all. And Solomon even said, pretty much everything's vanity, right? Like it's vanity to believe that your president is going to change everything. Like you have so much pride and so much vanity in one person. You have so much pride and vanity in yourself that you think how you believe in your right conservative values or your left liberal values are more important than somebody else's or better than it. We get caught up in this team mentality. But just to give you some biblical perspective, when Solomon says it's all vanity, basically, and there's nothing new under the sun, everything that's happening now has already been done before. There's nothing new under the sun. I encourage you this. Solomon wraps up the book of Ecclesiastes by saying that the will of man is to live, is basically just to have pleasure in what you've got, enjoy what you've got, and follow God's commandments. His words of advice to a young person is, hey, do whatever your heart desires, but just keep in mind, you're going to stand before God one day, and you're going to give an account to everything. So, I guess to say this, don't let this political stuff master your day. Don't let it master your emotions. Cast your vote. Enjoy your candidate if he won. It's okay if your candidate lost, because at the end of the day, you really ain't got that much control over it. You're vain, and it's exhausting and useless to believe that 50, whatever, 60 something, 70, 80 something, I don't know how many people live in America, don't share the same thought and view process you do. Some people just said, I don't care about right issues or left issues, social or not. I just want my life to be financially better. I want to quit fighting with my wife about finances. I want to go and give my kids groceries and then like look to spoil my kids in other ways. I don't want to tell my kids or my wife, no, we can't afford that because so much is being dropped on people price gouging and everybody making a dollar. So just don't let anything master you. Just enjoy what you have. Let's kind of go back to Bombadil. Bombadil just kind of lived off the land. Bombadil was just so consumed with pleasing, gosh, I forget her name, but that woman that lived with him, that lily woman, he was obsessed with getting her lilies. Actually, when he rescued Frodo and them, he was carrying lilies. He had come back from getting a bunch of lilies over the summer to or over the spring or whatever to give to his, I don't know if it's a wife, but this woman that lived with him was obsessed with. Like, let love master you. Let everything else around you fade away and let love master you. I know that sounds very preachy, but at the end of the day, enjoy what you got and keep in mind that we're all going to stand before God and give an account.